I'm Karen Burniston, the designer of Pop-It-Ups dies for Elizabeth Craft Designs, and today I'm here with a fun tutorial for combining pivot card dies into accordion album dies to make pivot accordions. This is my video for the July 2014 Designer Challenge, and the theme this month is Christmas in July, so my card today will be a Christmas theme, but just know that you could use this technique for any themed card. There are many different styles of accordion albums in the Pop-It-Ups collection, but the ones that are going to work best for this technique are the ones where the interior shape has two tabs. So that would be the Fancy Label Accordion 771 or the Katie Label Accordion number 903. For today's card, I'm going to use the Fancy Label Accordion, and what I'm doing here first is cutting the two pages that are going to be the center of my album where my pivot card is. And for these two pages, I chose a pretty double-sided pattern paper. So it's going to be a little bit less weight than a heavy cardstock. That way I can easily cut through two layers with my pivot card die later. I am going to make a 4-page album, so for my first and my last page, I will cut that out of a nice thick white cardstock. And then what I'm going to do to kind of tie in the pattern paper on all the pages is I'm going to use the outdoor edges. I'm going to start with the tree one and cut a little section of trees. Then I'll go ahead and use the Fancy Accordion die again to cut the bottom contour so that it will fit the page. Then when I've done that, I'll be able to glue that onto my final page and it will match those contours just perfectly. Can you tell that I just bought some new cool circus music for my videos? Okay, now I'm going to use the Rolling Hills edge from the outdoor edges and do the exact same process to add a little snow to page 1. Now I'm going to connect the two pattern paper pages, oh that's fun to say, together using some strong tape. And I'm just going to use those out in the outer tab like I typically would do for an accordion album. And I think what we really need here is some circus music. I'm only going to work with these two pattern paper pages. Again, so fun to say. Anyway, I'm only going to work with these for now. I'm not going to attach my white pages to the ends yet. It's going to be much easier for me to manipulate this and cut the pivot card if I'm only working with 2 pages instead of 4. I'm going to bring my tabs over just like I normally would. I'm basically treating this like a little 2-page album. And I'm going to connect those tabs, but I'm only going to do it temporarily. So I want some removable Scotch tape or something that is easily removed to attach those tabs where they eventually will go. And in this case, I can even attach them on top of the page because it doesn't matter. I'm going to remove it later. I just want them next to each other in the usual fashion. Okay, I'm going to freeze for a second here so you can see that my long tab is still to the right. My little short tabs are still to the right. And then I'm going to close up the card, basically like a backwards card. So you can see that the fold between the pages is on the right and the fold between the labels where the tabs are is on the left. Then I have to lift up my 2 outer frames so that I can slide the evergreen pivot card underneath so that it's only going to cut into the 2 labels. What I'm looking to do is get the center of that tree right over the edge where those 2 tabs are. And it is important that this not move, so I will tape it down. And it's also important that I center it so that there is a little bit of those tabs that are going to remain connected up at the top and below the tree. And what I'm looking for, again, is the center of that tree to be right over the edge where those 2 tabs are. Because I've slid this below the 2 outer frames, it will not cut into the outer frames at all. Now it's time to run that through my die cutting machine to cut that pivot card right through those 2 layers into those little labels. You're going to be humming it all day. You're welcome. Okay, now let's take a look at what has happened. Remember, I've used temporary tape to attach those tabs. So for now, it's still going to be connected, and I can go ahead and play with those pivot sections find the pivot points on both sides and give those a little pinch. And then what will happen is you'll see that the pivot card is now cut into the accordion album. Now the center tree looks kind of weird because part of it's missing, and that's fine, we don't need it at all. But I do want to make sure that I maintain my two outer trees, the ones that do have the pivot points. So I'm going to go in with my scissors and I'm going to chop out the center tree, but I'm going to do it so that that pivot point is still connected, and it doesn't really have to be pretty or straight, it just needs to be removed. Now I'm going to cut a little triple tree set to go in there a little bit later, but that's going to be my mechanism to connect it. So now I've done all of that work that I needed to do to get the pivot card cut into the accordion, and it's going to be much easier to decorate the accordion while it's flat. So I'll remove the temporary tape, flatten everything right back out again, and now I can continue on with my decorations. Now I can connect my two outer pages to the album, and again I'll use my strong red line tacky tape in the long tabs between the pages to connect them to each other. I used the fancy accordion die again to cut two more of those heavy white cardstock pages, and then isolated just the frame sections to glue up behind the two pattern paper ones so that they would all be similar weight. I really wanted similar weight among all the pages. There is a new set of frame edges to fit the fancy. It's called the Seasons frame edges, including one that's a snowflake design that'll be perfect for my card. I do suggest when you're using the more intricate frame edges to go ahead and add adhesive to the back of the paper or cardstock before you die cut. To know about frame edges, and this is true of all of them for any of the accordions, is they always float in the middle. In other words, they don't line up with the outside edge, they don't line up with the inside edge, they float the distance in the middle. When you put them on correctly, they will line up in the corners, they actually touch in the corners, they'll go all the way around the page and give you a perfect frame. In some cases, like this snowflake design, there is a piece that is completed in the corners. You can see there's a solid snowflake that ends up being completed in the corners when those pieces touch. Usually with some of them that are more intricate, you kind of have a little bit of wiggle room. You can kind of, jiggle them a little bit in the corners to make them fit once you get around to that final section. A brayer is a great choice for really mashing them on once you've got them set really nicely. Okay, now it is time to make my little triple tree set that's going to go in the center of my pivot card. So what I've done is I've just taken a piece of pattern paper, folded it in half, and what I'm looking to do is line up the pivot card die exactly like I did before. So the center of that tree is going to be right over the fold of the pattern paper. I want to tape that down so it will not move because I really do want that to be basically in the exact same position as when I cut it into the pages. Then I'll just roll that right through my machine. I can carefully remove my tape and get the die off of there, and then now let's take a look at what it has done. It's basically cut my little triple tree set. I will not need, for this one, this is our decorative one, so it doesn't really need any of the pivot points, it doesn't need any of the extra paper. So I can go ahead and cut kind of just straight across the bottom to remove the trees from the bottom edge. And then at the top, I actually like to kind of give it a fun little shape in there because again, I don't need the pivot point at all. So I can kind of come in and around and sort of match the contour of the other side of the tree when I cut those out. So my little triple tree set was cut with the pivot card die, and then I'm going to go to the accessory dies that come with it to cut the things that will embellish that little triple tree set. I've got a couple trees, I've got some stars. I'm not going to make you watch me do every step, but I'll explain what I did. Started with transparent glitter dots on all the spots of the paper. Then I added 3 pattern paper trees, some stars at the top of the 2 outside ones, and a glittered heart on one of the trees. When this card is folded up, those trees will fold in half, so you do want relatively flat embellishments in there when you decorate it. I've been getting a lot of emails about the glue bottle. It is a fine line applicator bottle. This one is a 20 gauge. They do come with different tips, and you can fill them with any glue of your choice. It just needs to be a nice, easy flow PVA dries clear glue. So I've used the glue on the left pivoting tree, and then I've added the left side of my triple tree set and just lined it up perfectly with the one below it. Now I can't connect the right side yet because I'm not done with my decorating, but you get the idea of how this is going to work. Once my accordion album gets put together, those trees will connect then on the other side. I think the new holiday house die would be just perfect in page 1. I did film myself putting this little house together, so I'll post that as a separate video. And when I put it on there, I just made sure that the tip of the roof was to the left of my little pivot point so it can still swing. Okay, time for the big moment. Let's put this thing together. I'm going to stand it up so you can get an idea of how it's going to work. I need to fold between my 2 pages to bring the smaller ones together. And then those 2 tabs that are still there are going to connect the pages together. I think mini glue dots are my best bet for that, or you could use a little bit of glue. Again, I'm going to fold my big pages to bring my smaller ones together and then just use those glue dots to connect the pages together. Okay, now that kind of brought my trees into the correct position already, but it's the right side still not connected. So I'm going to go back to my glue again. You definitely want the glue to be on the accordion album tree, not the back of the triple tree, because you might go too far. Remember, there's quite a bit of the triple tree that's just kind of hanging out over air, so you definitely want to add your glue to the accordion part. And then now, whatever angle you can do to get your fingers in there, and you're going to slide that. That's why glue is such a great choice for this, because you can still kind of slide it while it's wet and just manipulate it until you get that tree lined up perfectly with the tree below it. And just hold it until your glue dries. Okay, wonderful. You can kind of see how this is going to work. The album pages are going to fold one way and the pivot card is going to fold the other. You can kind of work with those 2 center pages to get them to where you have the kind of opposite angles there, and just make sure that that is collapsing nice and flat. You can even give it a good press in the flat position. Okay, that's pretty nifty. So now it's just a matter of completing our accordion album connection points. So those are going to be the little small tabs, just like usual. If you need a refresher on how to make the accordion albums, there are separate videos for that. Just go right to my YouTube channel and scroll through and you'll find the ones on the accordion albums. I like to work the little pivot points at the top and the bottom of each page. That helps me bring those over to its neighbor. And again, I could use glue dots or I could use glue. It doesn't matter, just to connect those to each other. And then I have one last set of pages to connect. Again, I've got some small tabs. I'm going to give those a little bend, work my little pivot points, bring that over to its neighbor and connect it. Typically with accordions, I start my big outer pages as a valley fold, but for this card, it's going to be a mountain first. So what that means is my little inner label is going to flip over and be plain white when the card is closed. So I didn't want that. So I went ahead and used my Holiday House Outdoor Edges and Evergreen Pivot card to decorate up the front of the album so that it would have decoration before you open it. So there you have it, one completed pivot accordion using the fancy label accordion and the Evergreen Pivot card. You can think about this kind of card being done in different themes, all sorts of year-round themes. Try the house pivot card. The fence would look great as a little pivoting point in the middle of an accordion. If you have enjoyed this tutorial, I hope that you will subscribe to my YouTube channel and like my Facebook page, Karen Burniston Designer. You can get more buying information about the dies at ecraftdesigns.com, and you can always find more pop-up ideas on my blog, karenburniston.com. Thanks for watching.